Get ready for another toxic workplace story. This one starts with someone who just recently left an admin job at the NHS. That's the National Health Service in the UK, for those who don't know. And they left this year because of a really hostile environment. So when this person went in, they were thinking, great, I'm working for the NHS. And they naively assumed that their colleagues would be compassionate and supportive people. Instead, they were subject to this kind of thing. When on reception, a co-worker stormed in and had a go at me about a minor error on my part within earshot of numerous people in the area. Being emailed about other minor errors, some of which weren't even my fault, and were made before I started, with the boss being CC'd in on each one. The then recently appointed manager spent 2 hours rooting through my desk, telling me to throw things in the bin in a rather aggressive tone of voice. On a number of occasions, if something went wrong, I'd immediately get asked if I did it, as if they automatically assumed it was my fault. Being dressed down by my manager for something one of my superiors didn't do, as if it was my responsibility to tell them to do it, despite them being there longer than I was. The latter example happened because my coworker, after talking to me about it in person, decided then to email me and CC the boss in. A coworker spotting a letter I printed with one error on it and describing it as a crap letter. Covering my coworker's workload when they were away on holiday, and instead of being thanked or even just asked how it went, they started going through everything I did with the intention of looking for mistakes. Stuff being dumped on my desk, then the same people who did that asking me, why do you have that on your desk? A coworker having a go at me because I didn't inform another coworker about a change to the system, despite not being told I was expected to or specifically asked to. Being told by my manager that he expects me to start crossing stuff out on my notepad that is related to completed tasks, or else it will be a performance management issue. Now, I'm not so sure that this one is quite as bad as the last one, but the clear thing to me about all of these things that are going on inside this specific workplace is that a high level of disrespect and disrespectful conduct or disrespectful attitudes is more than just accepted in this workplace. It is actively encouraged and it is actively perpetuated. So I think the big problem here is that, for me, what I would be doing in this situation is one of two things. So first of all, if you allow this to happen to you in the workplace, it means you haven't set any reasonable boundaries, and you need to set those boundaries really firmly. So as a side note, or as a related note, when you are setting boundaries in the workplace, you cannot diverge from them. You cannot diverge from them at all, right? So if you say, Thursday afternoons, I have to leave by 3 o'clock because I need to pick my kid up from school. If you stay past 3 o'clock ever and go against what you said, even in extenuating circumstances, especially if it's on a whim or at the last minute, what you've done is degrade the boundaries that you have tried to set, and people will not believe that your boundaries are real boundaries. So when you set those boundaries at work, you need to make sure that you're setting boundaries that you can enforce and that you will continue to be staunchly enforcing. Don't let any little thing get in the way of those things, which also means only set boundaries that are realistic and that you can actually stick to. Something that you are willing to almost die on a hill for. You want to be able to take that boundary all the way through the escalation path to HR, whatever it is that you need to do to make sure that your boundaries are respected. Now, a key point here is that when you first set your boundaries, people aren't necessarily going to believe them until you act as though they are real boundaries. So people are going to assume that it's bullshit, right? That's the thing. People are going to assume that your boundaries aren't real until they see evidence that you are sticking to your boundaries. And this is not a conscious thing. People will start acting differently once you set the rule and you stick to it. So if you set a 3 p.m. departure time on a specific day of the week for a specific reason, the only time you should ever diverge from that is for something that is planned well in advance, a week or two at least. If there is a specific project that requires some extra time on that specific day, it needs to be planned out well in advance, and you need to make sure it is known very clearly and very loudly that you are making a change that goes against your normal boundaries for this specific reason, and it only is happening in this one circumstance. It is not going to happen regularly, and you are not setting the expectation that this is the new normal. So, the key takeaway message here is set the boundaries early and stick to them. It's really hard to do. People will try to push you. You just need to say no, even though you feel like you're being a dick sometimes by saying no. So getting back to this particular workplace, the toxicity of this workplace is obviously well ingrained. And the second thing I would be suggesting is 100% you need to start looking for a new job. And this place is definitely not for you. It's surprising how many workplaces operate in this fashion. It really is. So you need to make sure that you're doing a thorough job of vetting the culture of any new business that you're going to join if this type of thing isn't for you. And for most people, this isn't cool. And a lot of people who started in this particular team probably came in with the same ideals of respect and that people will be compassionate and supportive. But over time, if you stay, you will get dragged into that culture and you'll turn into one of these people that you hate, that you don't want to be around. So don't let yourself get sucked into these negative cultures. Seek out further employment, and there's some information in the last video that I made about the toxic workplace that tells you a good way to determine the culture of a workplace before you even start there. So give that a go. Drop me a comment or a DM with any of your toxic workplace experiences. I'd love to hear about them, and I'll do a review like this. I'll go through it and I'll share your story and what I think about it. I hope that was interesting.